Hello and welcome to Recruiting in Hospitality from Caterer.com. I'm Lancelot Narayan, and in each program we discuss employability and employment in the UK hospitality industry. We talk about retention, recruitment, development, and matters that affect you and your team. Now, for many years now, Caterer.com has been a proud partner with Catering Scotland for the awards for excellence, and they're upon us again. They were postponed from last year for reasons I don't need to enter into, but they're back. And we're going to find out a lot more about what's going on with the awards and hospitality in Scotland. And I'm delighted to say that from Catering Scotland, I have with me today, it's Alex Buchanan.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. I'm very well. I understand the kids are back to school now.
They are. We've kept them locked up for the last couple of months, sort of force feeding them
in that wardrobe.
Rudimentary. Yeah, that one there. They've just been let out, but yeah, we've sort of attempted to educate them a little bit, but they've actually gone back to school for everyone's sake. I think actually they effectively ran out of the house yesterday morning when school started again. Yeah, because they were as desperate to get out of here as we were to have them out. So
yeah, absolutely. My daughter is in Scotland as well, as you know, and it was like she'd eaten a bag of Haribos. She was just.
We took a long time to scrape them off the ceiling before we could coax them down to get them out of the house. But I tell you, it's so quiet here; it's very, very eerie.
Takes some getting used to.
Oh, it does. I mean, I can't lock my door in my office because it's an old-fashioned handle with no mortise lock or anything else. And they used to. It's like being in the house with Kato from the Pink Panther. Like you see these news reports of the guy. He was the ambassador, I think, a couple of years ago or last year, and he was basically ambushed by his little kid, but she wasn't meaning to. She was just kind of coming in her little. Sort of push trolley toy. But these guys, I mean, mine actually come in to deliberately sabotage my meetings. And at one point I was on a friend's one, I'll just tell you this quickly, I was on a friend's kind of Friday night drinking session, and they kept on coming in. So I hooked the door underneath the handle and sat on the door at an angle. And then I heard this, and they'd started drilling the lock, basically. Get out. And then they just pulled the lock out, and I went flying, and the PC went mild, my beer flew. So at that point, I decided they have to go back to school.
You should have recorded that. That would be priceless.
I don't know if it was being recorded, but you would have seen if it had been the computer just going.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's so funny.
Fortunately, yeah, I was a little bit too far gone to make much sense of it.
I'd love to have seen that. Brilliant. Well, look, the awards are upon us again. Let's go into a little bit of background. Tell me about the history of catering in Scotland. How did it begin? How did it develop?
So I was working for a publishing company 18, 19 years ago, and they had a stable of about 4 or 5 different trade titles. So they had a property title, a business title, a legal title, and then they bought Catering Scotland because they wanted to get to hospitality. But back in those days, it was very much a catering title. It was called Catering Scotland. It didn't really pay much attention to the hospitality side of things. It paid even less attention to the tourism side. And my business partner, he became my business partner, Gordon Clark, and I realized that actually the publishing house were missing a trick with this, because they were really appealing to literally just the kind of stainless steel type of catering that was in every kind of office and every kind of school at that time. But catering was going through a change, and it was also inextricably linked to hospitality and becoming more so with tourism. You couldn't have any of them without the other one, sort of thing. So we sort of spread the net a little bit wider and started to develop it within this firm. And then we got word that actually the firm had maybe spread themselves a bit too thin, and they were thinking of selling off a title. So long story short, we ended up buying it from them. And went our own way with it, only within about a year or so of starting on it. So Gordon was the sales director and I was editor. And I had 2 or 3 people working from within the firm on the title with us, and they actually left and came to work with us at the same time, and we all kind of hived off and set up on our own. And so that worked really, really well for about 10 years. The following year, we set up the CiS Excellence Awards, which we'd been planning together to actually set up within the publishing company, but thankfully that hadn't gone down the road, so we didn't need to buy that part of it from them. We were able to start it on our own afresh. It actually, the whole buyout extended and lengthened the process by a year, because I think we would have got round to it a lot sooner. Had we had the sort of might of the publishing house behind us. But setting up on our own was a bit more of a challenge, but ultimately more rewarding. And it also meant that we could put our stamp on it and actually we were able to develop it as we wanted to. So the CiS Awards were set up in 2004, and then we ran Catering Scotland magazine alongside that. And then trade publishing eventually started to evolve and change, and we realized the power of online, and actually most people were getting their information online around sort of 2010 to 2013. We were beginning to notice this, so we redeveloped the site, stopped publishing the magazine, and moved everything online.
Right. Okay. I'm with you. Oh yeah, a lot of magazines are doing that, going and taking everything exclusive. I still like to hold a physical product,
Absolutely.
but that's me personally. I'm a collector of those things. But I understand how it's, as far as the industry goes, I can understand completely why it's more more feasible to move forward in that direction.
It was funny because we set up this CateringScotland.com, which we already had. We had a site that kind of followed the magazine, and everything that came out in the magazine was then published on the site. But timing wise, it was the wrong way around. Everything should really have been published first as quickly as you had it online, and then followed up in a magazine sort of thing. But it wasn't going to work that way. So we redeveloped it, and actually very quickly we realized that the site became not so much an online magazine, because even now that's still not that popular. So I totally understand what you're meaning about that. But it became more of a marketing platform for companies in hospitality and catering to be able to market their services. And we use SEO, and we use all sorts of kind of the dark arts of internet marketing to be able to get those, using editorial to get our clients further up the search engines, so that they're then found more easily by their clients. So it became more of a marketing site. And then we started publishing in 2013 the Catering Scotland yearbook, which was a physical 120, 150 page yearbook, which was great for about 3 or 4 years. A huge amount of work to put together.
Yeah,
because you only have a certain amount of time at the end of the year to be able to put it together in time for the start of the following year. So we did that for 4 years, and then thought, this is actually killing us. So we concentrated more on the online side of things and the awards.
Right, terrific. What do you feel? Let's talk about your position in Scotland. How do you feel Catering Scotland serves Scottish hospitality? I mean, what's the feedback like for what the services you provide?
So when we started CateringScotland.com, there wasn't, and there still isn't really anything out there that is hospitality. It's purely for the Scottish hospitality sector in terms of resources, online resources. There are lots of different hospitality sites that you can use for news and views and things, but where we differ, we use news and views and opinion pieces, but we use our site to be promoting the clients rather than just as a news site or as a features site. So we can feature news and features, but actually what we end up doing more is we sell certain sections of the site to our clients, and then they are then provided with unlimited space to send us their releases, their stories, their features, their articles, their interviews, whatever it may be. And we are then, the agreement is that we then publish and promote that. So it's far better value for them to take out an account with us for a year, and they then are literally able to send us, if they want to send us 20 articles a day, we're compelled to publish those and then promote them. That's the deal. Some of them don't use it as much as that, and they might send us one a week. Some really don't take advantage of it enough and maybe send us one every fortnight. And that's fine, and we can work with that. But actually, it's the power of editorial online. It really drives optimization, and it's a lot more powerful the more they send us. We make it interesting and we'll make it relevant. If they're sending us something just for the sake of it, we will turn it around to actually make it relevant for the audience. But the more we get, the more we can do for them, and the more we push them up the rankings.
That's a great service, actually. I mean, and you're quite right. I mean, if you can help them to make it more relevant for them, because a lot of people don't realise how to phrase things, how to pitch things. So if you can provide that service as well, that's fantastic, brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so the pandemic, as we've talked about how it has affected us personally, but it's affected hospitality across the board. It's been well documented. I mean, nearly every day in the news. In your view, do you think the situation in Scotland has been different to the rest of the country? I mean, I spend a lot of time in Scotland, and through work I meet a lot of Scottish hospitality. I have done a lot of Scottish hospitality people, and I get my view from being amongst them is that there's a slightly different culture, maybe, in Scottish hospitality. Do you think hospitality companies in Scotland, Scottish hospitality, do you think it, requires different forms of help? Are their needs different?
It's a very good question. It's also, I mean, in many respects, hospitality, the whole of trade is different up here. Scotland is seen as sort of not a micro market, that's wrong, but it's seen as its own self-contained market. And if you can break that market from wherever else you are, south of the border, abroad, whatever, then Scotland can offer a sense of loyalty to your brand and to your products and your services. Getting into that market is quite tricky in the first place. From a hospitality perspective, and the operators up here, they found it as tough as down south, potentially tougher because it's, we're bound by the rules of the Scottish Government and what they decide is appropriate for beating this pandemic that we're all going through or getting past it. Without getting political, because it all depends on whoever, on whatever political leanings someone may have. But what we're seeing from Catering Scotland is that a lot of operators out there are finding it increasingly frustrating that the government up here are doing their best in terms of trying to safeguard the people that they're tasked with looking after, i.e. the population of Scotland. But at the same time, it's at the expense of businesses, because you have a situation at the end of last year where all these companies all these operators had invested a lot of money because they'd been told to, in terms of PPE and various innovations to keep people separate and different security measures and serving tables and glass screens and everything else. And then the rug was pulled out of them shortly after that and said, oh, no, sorry, you're just going to have to close again. And they spent all this money and there was no sort of recompense for that. And so they felt incredibly let down and frustrated about that. And everyone understands why it happened, because you can't let this virus run loose. But there didn't seem to be any acknowledgement that the hospitality industry had gone through this. And the other argument, of course, you'll be aware of, is that arguably if you're in a pub or a restaurant or a hotel, you're under the guardianship of the people who run that. And it's their responsibility to make sure that you are acting responsibly and you're in an environment that, you're there, and it's a privilege to be there. So you better act responsibly or you're out, or sanctions will be taken against you. And if you throw everyone out of the pubs and the bars and the hotels and you tell them to go home, then if they're in that kind of mood, they'll just take their friends with them and the virus will spread anyway. So it was kind of counterproductive. And I think Scotland has frustrated a lot of operators that way. And you can see that from all of the different organizations that have sprung up. These Zoom calls happen all day, every day, amongst different operators and their representative bodies. And a lot of the message that's coming out is we need the freedom and we need the autonomy to be able to determine our own future in terms of how we're managing our business. Don't tell us, especially, actually, the funny thing is, you're asking about what Scotland is like. I've been in Edinburgh a few times over the last week or two. There doesn't seem to be any lockdown at all. Cars, people everywhere. And I'm hearing a bit more about that in London as well. I don't know where all these people are going, because when they get there, everything's shut. But they're just out, and it's almost like they have been told quietly, yes, lockdown's over. Just go out. I mean, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything, but you're okay to leave. There's no significant police presence anywhere. There's no checkpoints that I'd heard that there might be. nothing. People are just out and about, and I suspect they've got their excuses ready if they were to get stopped. But it's a difficult one up here because the UK as a whole is trying to beat this, and Scotland is being more cautious, and that's understandable. But it's also strangling the sector, and I think they need to act more cohesively.
Yeah. Let's talk about the awards. You touched on how they came about. How did the pandemic affect the awards? They were postponed from last year. Go through that with me.
There's an interesting story. So we were right in the middle of entries opening or being open in March last year, and it's traditionally the busiest time. So entries are open for 6 weeks from January to March, end of January to March, for all of the categories. People enter online, they enter their businesses online, and they send all of the information through to us. We collate it, and then it gets sent off to the judges when the judging happens. Very much like the Caterer.com People Award. When the pandemic started to hit, we didn't really have much of an idea how it was going to affect us at the time. In fact, I phoned the event manager and said, I think we're going to need to, this was the beginning of March, we're going to need to put off the awards in May. And she said, "All right, that's going to be tricky." But I said, "Well, we don't really, we don't have to, but it's not looking great at the moment, and we, probably won't be able to attract too many people if it's going to continue." So we agreed to, and I phoned the hotel, and at that point, I remember the conversation with the venue, and they'd had a couple of cancellations, but nothing was terrible. It was remarkable how quickly it escalated after those calls. That was like the beginning of March, and then within 3 weeks, everything had shut down. And the effect it had on us was that not only could we not have our awards, but actually we stopped getting entries. So if we've got 20 categories, for example, we only had sufficient entries for 10 or 12 of them, because people tend to, you'll know exactly what this is like from your own, they tend to treat it like their tax return, the process, and they will leave it until the very last minute. And then they go, "Oh, I've got to get my entry in." And if we close them at midnight on a Friday in March, they will be there typing away at 11 p.m. and they'll be all sending it through at the same time. And so the result of that is when we closed the entries down 10 days before they were due to enter. Well, in fact, we didn't actually officially close them, but everyone knew that nothing was going to be happening with the awards. The entries just stopped. People were firefighting their own businesses and their own livelihoods and their own worries, and we totally understood that. We didn't really say anything about the awards not happening. It was sadly very obvious that they weren't going to be able to take place because nothing was open. So that was catastrophic, I would say, without being too melodramatic from an awards perspective. But everyone was going through the same thing, so we weren't in any different boat than any other business or person. And we just sort of had to ride with it and just wait to see. It became a bit more frustrating because as we were coming out of the summertime, we could see some hope on the horizon, and there was the Eat Out to Help Out, and things were opening up again. It wasn't normal by any means, but it was looking like it could get back to some degree of normality. And the entries that we had been accepting were, of course, based on 2019's activity because they were open from last January. And so it was based on when times were good. So we still wanted to be able to acknowledge those and to promote them and have an awards ceremony, but we couldn't physically have it. And we decided quite early on not to take it online. We wanted to ride it out and see when we could. We would rather not have a ceremony than go online because everyone was spending all day online, and we just didn't want to ask them to do that again for a ceremony. We didn't think it was going to lend enough to the shortlisted finalists when they were eventually judged. And we didn't think it was going to lend enough to the sponsors who, paid to be part of this event.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we started to consult with all of them, and we very quickly realized there wasn't a huge appetite for taking it online. Others had, and that was great. And, some of them did really, really well with the way they did it. But we just decided that we were going to wait it out and try and come up with something different. So if we couldn't physically have a ceremony, we were going to work something else out that would be the next best thing. And that's what it's the idea we've come up with now.
Okay, so what are your plans?
I can't tell you. That was going to be my next reveal. I just can't say. No, it's not a huge secret, but it's dependent on being allowed out of the current lockdown. It's not necessarily bound by the restrictions in terms of being able to have a large event, because I don't think that's going to come back for a wee while until at least the vaccine has rolled out through the population of those who will end up having it. And then there's going to be a lot of changes made and whatever. So we may not get back to the large indoor sort of 500 to 600 person guest in a big hotel, that kind of night for the next few months. We're hoping to for the 2021 awards, but we don't want to ignore or forget about the 2020 awards that were literally just judged a couple of months ago. We have a shortlist, it's now been published, and we have a plan on how to announce that. But again, there's not much I can really say without giving too much away at the moment. But it will become clear fairly swiftly when we start to roll it out.
Okay. Well, there are some things we can talk about, and something I find quite interesting. You've got 3 new categories
Yes.
for these new awards. You've got the Collaboration Award, the Innovation Award, and the Social and Community Award. What was the thinking behind introducing these? What are you aiming to highlight?
Okay, so this was an interesting time last summer when we realised that we wanted to continue with the 2020 awards, but obviously we had a shortfall in terms of the number of entries. People had just, as I said, shut down their businesses and been trying to firefight them. So we wanted to reopen all of the normal categories in the summertime to allow people the opportunity to enter if they had been meaning to before lockdown. And then we started thinking, well, if these are for 2019's activity, what can we introduce that will acknowledge the pain and suffering and sacrifice that everyone's going through at the moment, but also the work that some of these organizations have been doing to really give something back. So suddenly, because lockdown was effectively so sudden, you had all these operators who had a lot of resources, and they had a lot of generosity, and they had a lot of goodwill and time and staff, and there wasn't much they could do with it because the industry wasn't functioning properly. So we came up with three new categories that aimed to acknowledge the work that a lot of operators had been doing and a lot of individuals had been doing during the first few months of lockdown, to help others, either to help themselves get through it by motivating and keeping their staff busy or their clients, or literally helping others, in some cases actually helping competitors, by collaborating with them to make sure that actually it's the kind of, if we don't get through this together, no one's getting through it type approach. And so we came up with 2 or 3 drafts of the criteria for these, and we handed them around the judging board to see if they could help them shape it for us. And then we came up with these 3 categories, as you said, the Social and Community Award, and the Innovation Award, and the Collaboration Award. And when we reopened the entries for all of the other categories, as we introduced these at the same time. And what was remarkable was that the level of interest in them we hadn't ever experienced in 18 years of the awards. Is phenomenal. If we were to introduce a new category, which we sometimes do, we might mothball one if it's become out of fashion or becoming less popular or whatever, or relevant, and then we'll introduce a new category. Traditionally, that first year of that category is not particularly busy in terms of entries. They're never that popular. Sometimes they are, depends on what it is, but often they're not, because people just don't know enough about it, or they're not aware of its existence, or whatever it is, or they want to find out the kind of winner that will eventually come from it. So they're never that popular. But these 3 new categories last summer were the most popular I think we've ever had. We were just inundated with entries for all of them, because all of these people had pent up emotion, and they'd been doing all these things not for recognition, but when they realized they could get recognition, they decided, actually I want that, or I want to put someone forward for that, because the work that they've done is just phenomenal. And so they just came flooding in, and it was really heartening to see, and actually really interesting to find out what people have been doing there, because they hadn't been shouting about it, and why would they?
No, it is. When you do a bit of digging and you find out what people have actually been doing, and organisations off their own back, it's amazing. It's very inspirational. I've been doing a lot of that over this past year, finding out what people have been doing, and it's great. So it's very exciting and it's terrific that you've introduced these to the awards. How do you see Scottish hospitality rebuilding itself over the coming months? The vaccine's a big success now, and there's a roadmap for reopening. What do you foresee, and what would you like to see?
I would like to see things beginning to open up cautiously, but gradually and consistently over the next couple of months. So one of the things that we've organised that we actually managed to hold over the end of the summer was a road trip. So we've done a couple of. They started off as networking road trips where the idea was to get people together, let them enjoy Scottish hospitality and the roads and everything else, and they come together through a shared love of hospitality, but they also have other interests, and one of those major interests is driving and cars and roads and fun and just socializing. And we found that because of the summer lockdown, the demand for that was we did have one planned for April, May last year. Obviously that had to get put off. So long story short, we were able to do it in October. There was a slight sort of noticeable increase in caution from some people who said, I'd love to join you, but I better not, or I can't get. Actually, they couldn't really travel from down south to come and join us. A lot of them couldn't. But we got 25 to 30 people. We did 2 days of the North Coast 500, stayed in a couple of spectacular hotels. And more important than anything, we actually wanted to continue to visit them because we didn't want to let the hotels down. We didn't want to say, because while they were open, while it was legal, and we were able to go, if we had to stay within the rules and regulations of social distancing, instead of having a big banqueting table, we were at tables of 2, and you had to finish drinking by 10 p.m. and then go outside. We were fine with that. People were just so desperate. The summer had built up this kind of pressure cooker of desperation to get outside.
Yeah.
And so it was absolute blast. We were blessed with good weather, great roads, and just a lovely sense of camaraderie and fun. And I was surprised. I thought it might be fun, but I was surprised as to how much fun we had. And we were totally respectful of the rules. We were all from hospitality, and so even after a few drinks, we were still keeping our distance as much as possible. Obviously for a photograph or something, and people are smiling at the end of the night together, but we were outside if any of that was going on, and it just showed the demand. And actually, I think that is really what's going to happen because of foreign travel not coming back for a little while. It's looking like. I think the demand for obviously staycations and trips around Scotland is going to increase exponentially as the lockdown lifts. I think people are desperate to get out of their homes and out of their work uniforms, if you like, and just escape and see a bit of Scotland. It's a great excuse to be able to do that. So actually, from hospitality's perspective up here, I hesitate to use the term bumper or bonus year, but I genuinely think it's going to be, as soon as we're allowed to, and the vaccine is rolled out more, I think it's going to be very successful for Scotland, definitely.
I hope so. I really do. What's next for Catering Scotland? What plans have you got for the remainder of the year and into the following?
Okay, so from the CiS Awards perspective, we have this this alternative ceremony for the 2020 awards, and then as soon as we're able to do that, and as I say, that requires lockdown to lift, but as soon as we're able to do that, we're going to be opening the entries for 2021, and we would hope that we're able to have a ceremony. We were always actually thinking of moving the ceremony from May, which is where it's been for the last 18 years, to the end of the summer anyway, September, October. Just
award season, really.
Yeah.
A lot of them happen. Ours, Catering.com People Awards happens. The AA Awards, other hospitality awards happen around that time.
October, isn't it? I think October, November. Yeah.
So we were hoping.
September. So I mean, we were hoping to have ours in September. There's nothing that really clashes specifically in, say, mid-September. The difference will be now is that we've always had a Thursday night for the event. That's the traditional party night, because everyone can take the Friday off or whatever. I've heard from various venues that they are now booked up until the end of time on a Thursday night, and you won't get a Thursday night until well into the next life. So don't even try it. But the difference is, I think, people probably won't mind going out on a Monday or a Tuesday, because a lot of people are still going to be working from home, maybe forever, or certainly for the foreseeable future. And actually, whereas a Monday night was sacrilege before, and a Tuesday was getting, that's quite hard work, because I've got the rest of the week to put up with it. I'm inclined to believe, hopefully not naively, that actually Mondays and Tuesdays won't necessarily be off limits from now on. And actually, people are going to be so desperate to get out to these. It's funny how much we've not taken advantage, but taken them for granted. Social evenings, work dues. I won't go to that one because I went to it last year, or I've got another one next month or something. People are going to be queuing up to go to these, I think, just to be desperate for social interaction and a drink.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I mean, I can't wait to get back out. Alex, it's been great talking to you, and I've got to say, for all these years, it's been a brilliant partnership with you and Catering Scotland, and we're really looking forward to finding out what's going to happen and how you're going to hold the awards. I do want. Is it going to be this? Is it going to be that? How about this? We'll find out.
Put it this way: it's not groundbreaking, it's not revolutionary, but it hasn't been done this way before. So okay. I'm making it sound far more interesting than it's going to be, but it's going to be great fun to do. And Caterer.com, as our partners, have been phenomenal over the last few years. And I spoke to Kathy a few days ago. We're going to be, they are actually, I'm not sure if you're aware, but as part of the overall sponsorship, we're now aligning Caterer.com as a sponsor with one of these new awards. I believe it's the Collaboration Award, for a very specific reason that will again become apparent when we're able to. You're not getting the award, by the way, so don't be too. But you may be involved in its presentation in due course. So.
Oh, terrific! Well, look, in any event, I'll be there in one form or another.
Yeah.
And Alex, it's been great talking to you. So thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much indeed, Lance. It's been great. Really good to see you as well.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.